Control the triage, control the project. I believe it enough that I actually had a shirt made, but what does it even mean? Unless your project is in a state of complete anarchy, the work that people are doing is being regulated in some way. Maybe you're doing milestone planning at the beginning of each of your milestones. Maybe you're having a meeting where you pile all of the tasks up in a giant pile and pull them out one by one until all the tasks have an owner. But chances are it's something a bit more controlled than that. There's a list somewhere of all the tasks, and they are being sorted by some sort of priority order and assigned to various people. The act of controlling that list is ultimately triage. As you get closer and closer to the end of a project, your tasks are going to become more and more dominated by bugs. Bugs are going to become what you're doing. And usually when I talk about triage, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the act of keeping your bug list in order and making sure that things are getting done in the right order by the right people and people aren't getting overloaded and that you have a really good understanding of what's going on the project. But the reality is that triage is something that's relevant throughout your project. It might have a different name when you are dominated more by tasks than by bugs, but it's essentially the same thing. And I think that the phrase control the triage, control the project still applies. If you are the person or group of people who are deciding what tasks get done by who and in what order, you're basically in control of the project, regardless of who is inputting feedback into the project. Something to keep in mind that becomes incredibly obvious as you make the transition from one primary source of work to another is that most people are really bad at working on two different lists. So if you have a task list and a bug list on a single person, most people are going to have a lot of difficulty balancing these against each other with any effectiveness at all. Even if they're in the same application, if their prioritization isn't done in a unified way, one of the two things is going to just constantly win. Often projects can get themselves into trouble by prioritizing tasks over bugs, and they just start accumulating bugs more and more until the project is just teetering under the weight of this accumulated bug debt. For me, I actually believe that as soon as it is practical, you should look at collapsing your multiple databases of work into a single database. For me, that's the bug list. And I think I've mentioned this before. You can write anything as a task if you try hard enough, and you can write anything as a bug if you try hard enough. At some point, it makes sense to do that work and transition the remaining tasks into bugs so that you can now sort that list into a meaningful priority order that is a single list and people can act on as if it's a single list. The other thing that being in control of the triage means is you're setting the tone of what the project is thinking about and worrying about. One of the things I love about group triages is this consensus that forms as you go through a list of bugs or a list of tasks as a group, discuss them, and reach a consensus as to what's important about the project and what's not, and what can wait, and what can wait and never be fixed. Because ultimately, that's one of the things that happens in triages, is that you let things die, or you choose to have things die. Deciding what not to do is as important for shipping a game as deciding what to do. Because everything makes sense, everything is a potential feature or a potential bug that can be fixed. But you can't do all of them. Every game has at least one bug in it. Every game could have at least one more feature. Deciding when to stop is the only way that you ultimately ship. Triage can be exhausting because it is the act of making decision after decision, potentially only spending 45 seconds between decisions. Every decision you make is a little bit less in your reserve of decision-making energy. But it's critical to getting it done. And the act of going through this list is ensuring that things get done by the right people in the right order. The other thing that triage does is it gives you a constant understanding of what's going on the project. In some ways, it can be better than even doing your own playthroughs, or at least an excellent second source of data. Playing the game gives you a snapshot, a deep understanding of the game through the eyes of you as a player. Whereas a triage with a team that has a lot of people playing the game gives you the opposite. It gives you a broad understanding of the project as a whole, as viewed from the perspective of what's coming into the database. So I don't know that either is a replacement for the other, but I do think that if you are simply playing your game, if your game is sufficiently large, you as a player cannot get perfect coverage for it. Playing your game as a player is critical to an understanding of the game as a whole. But if you are in a decision-making place on your project, especially for larger projects, not attending triage means that you are abdicating a certain amount of understanding of what's going on in the project and decision-making power in terms of what's going to ultimately ship with the project. Control the triage, control the project. I really do believe this. Triage can be exhausting, it can be annoying, it can be infuriating, but it's an important part of making a game, and you should start doing triage earlier than you think, and probably spend more time on it than you want to earlier than you think, in order to make sure that your project is set up to be as successful as possible. A special thanks to my members. They provide the resources that this channel needs to keep running. If you're interested in becoming a member, there's a link to that down in the description. Obviously, we have merch. This is Control the Triage, Control the Project. If you're interested in picking something up, there should be a link to that below as well, or even maybe something that showed up somewhere here to buy it straight from the video. That helps the channel out as well. Have you ever attended a triage? What did you think? Was it the hardest hour to 7 hours of your life? Let me know that down in the comments. I will see you again soon. Thank you.